Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Down to Business. Today I've got Jode Roach joining me from Allied. He'll go into a lot more detail than I will, but I'll say moving services because I know I've used it quite a bit. But many of you would know Jode being a bit of a community liaison officer, let's say that. But very involved in the rugby community, and Jode, great to have you along, mate. Thanks for joining me.
No, thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.
So, mate, I might let you give a bit more of your background than, I guess I've just done. But, you're in Allied now. But tell me the journey of, Newcastle, Hunter, etc., and how you're fallen into business, and particularly the business you're in.
Look, Andrew, it's been an interesting journey. I started doing commerce back a very long time ago, and accounting wasn't for me. I do apologise. But so I went into, I started to do the finance and marketing sort of subjects more so. I went to Sydney and started doing a bit of work in that, played rugby overseas, travelled overseas. But eventually I wanted to come back to Newcastle. I loved it here. I've grown up here. Family's here. All my friends and connections are here. So I actually went into financial planning. Did all that, became an authorised representative, came back to Newcastle and started doing financial planning, realised that really wasn't probably too far removed from accounting, and it wasn't necessarily for me. And one of my good mates at the time, a friend from rugby, Tom Wasley, who's my business partner, long-time business partner now since 2006. He was the manager of this depot, and it was a company-owned branch at the time. He was telling me he was going to be out of a job and they were going to franchise it, and at the time we're going, let's have a look at it. So, and the rest is history. So we bought back in 2006, and the journey's been from there.
Because I guess I'll pick up on some of those points. Like, you've obviously gone around the world, as you said, travelling and that sort of thing. How much have you seen Newcastle change from growing up here to where it is now, and also from an opportunity sense?
Oh, look, obviously Newcastle's moved on dramatically. The attitudes, I think just the way we actually see ourselves has changed. Having travelled, and you look at other cities, and I love a big city, to visit, but I think Newcastle brings the best of both of that. I always call it a country town with big city conveniences. We're close to Sydney, for a music concert, a doctor, whatever, sporting event, whatever it may be, it's 2 hours down the road. So I always felt that Newcastle had growth, and we continue to see that. Our business sort of shows that too, because we've continued to grow, and people are moving here and people are moving around, and, we're drawing bigger companies. And so, no, it's definitely changed since I've grown up, but it's still got that same local feel, which is what I love about it.
Mm. And I guess another thing I'll grab on there before we go into actually Allied, a lot of people, I think, this day and age think, well, whether it be HSC or you've got a job, like, that's it, you've got to make it. But really, I've got a bit of the same history. I've chopped and changed a bit. It isn't everything, and you can move in other directions. So, but tell me about that, where you've gone, well, I've put all this effort in to, say, commerce and finance and financial planning, and actually building that up to say, well, I'm going to jump. Like, what sort of decision making is in that?
Yeah, look, I said I actually was reasonably academic at school, and I felt pressure to do university, and I did my MBA, so there was that sort of pressure to be in a professional environment. Through university, I did a lot of other labouring things. I put itchy bats in roofs, I mixed cement, I did all that. I did all those things, and I was pretty clear I was very unhandy. That wasn't something I was very good at, so I didn't really see myself in a blue-collar environment. But once I was in there, I really adapted to that sort of business and the flexibility that running your own business brought. I'd never really given it any thought because I didn't have a trade, a niche or anything like that. It was a very general sort of broad education that I had. So,
Okay. But, I guess you've moved into Allied, and we said you started with Newcastle. Yeah, out to 3 locations, 3 depots now.
Yeah, we've got Coffs Harbour and Katherine in the Northern Territory. So, yep.
Bit of a distance between the not so much Coffs, but the Katherine depot. Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's Coffs gives us a sort of a strategic alignment up and down the coast between Brisbane, and allows us to have a territory from Yamba down to the Brooklyn Bridge, out to Cobar. So it sort of had its, it created a big sort of network and chain right up the New South Wales coast for us. But Katherine's actually really in line with the things we do a lot of here, which is the Defence Force stuff. So we are very seasonal business. and it became very apparent that that's the sort of the path we'd go down. We'd just make hay when the sun shines.
So that's interesting, because a lot of people say, look, we do moving services, and you think moving home, but talk to us about niching or focus on particular, as you said, defence, particular sectors, and what moving services mean, because it's not just picking up boxes.
No, look, we do anything from moving someone's grandmother's bed 3 houses down the street to any country in the world. Effectively, we can move anything from anywhere. Locally, we've done a lot of stuff at the RAF base, police stations, the courthouse. So it's also that business relocation stuff, and a lot of the part of being the allied network, we've got a lot of corporates. But people like BHP, we move their executives when they make decisions to move their executives as part of their relocation package. Then we're the ones that do it.
Yeah, and because speaking from a personal experience, I guess it's packing boxes, thinking about even the thought of moving, that sort of stuff. And we've done it multiple times, but you've got that value add and where you can make life easier, I guess, from, I know you do packing services and, not just the actual moving part, assembly, de-assembly, if that's a word, talk to me about the sort of stuff you do and where the value add is.
Well, look, you said it's removals is one of those things. I think it's like painting. Everyone, it's the thing that they think they can turn their hand to and get the job done and do it cheaply. But at the end of the day, we do have guys and people, a team, guys, I should say, that come in and go everything from, the fine paintings to machinery to anything it may be. We pack from, packing the house to having that network that can move it across the country to around the world. And it is said it's a very strenuous and difficult thing to actually do until you've done it yourself a few times and realise that the expertise is involved.
Yeah, and I guess with that, the strenuous part, I couldn't agree more. How do you go with, I guess, as we've moved on in time, less and less people going into trades or manual labour and that sort of stuff? How do you accommodate that, and how is there technology involved? Like, what happens these days?
Look, most of our technology is surrounded within the inventing and the logistics side of things. Look, I think people forget when they build houses and the fancier houses get and the fancier furniture gets, that people actually have to get it inside the house and out of the house and up the stairs around the corner. So I think it's the last thing that's actually given any thought to. So a lot of it is really manual handling effectively. We do use machinery, and we've got a business relocations team in Sydney that do a lot of stuff like laboratories and whatever, and they use a greater level of technology as far as that goes. But a lot of the time, it's just the techniques and the manpower for us locally. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So you went into a franchise model, and a lot of people hear franchise, but they wouldn't exactly know what it is. I mean, maybe expand on that a bit, but also how's it been as an operating model and some of the pros and cons of franchise?
Look, we were in a pretty rare sort of position. It wasn't like a McDonald's or a something like that where they've got a really set base model on what you get, what you don't get. We came in, we were actually previously a branch. I think there might have been a few previous franchises, so there was a lot of sort of teething. They were learning as much as what we did. As far as the pros go, with Allied in particular, we've got the world's biggest network, and we don't have to deal with agents. We've got that. We've got business. We're dealing generally with inside the business still around the world. They're actually very flexible and allowing us to run our own businesses very independently. And then I guess obviously things like marketing restrictions and stuff like that, all those little things that sort of come with franchises. But it is look, you couldn't create the network we have, which is I think the world's biggest relocation network, and be a part of something like that yourself. So it's allowed us to grow our business from within inside. We have our own territory, so as I mentioned, we can only uplift in a certain area, but then we send it to other branches, depots, franchises around the world to deliver.
And how's that? I mean, that's that importance of, or as you say, physical network, but also the ability to network. I don't think you would have done that so much as maybe back in the days of financial planning. Do you have particular roles, or is that more you, or is that Tom, your business partner, or is it just something that comes with the territory?
Look, I think Tom and I have very different skill set. Tom does a lot of the sales background stuff. He has expertise in the actual industry and business. I brought some business acumen and ideas to the business. And as we've grown, I guess it's allowed us to sort of really identify our own flaws or where we don't, where our strengths don't lie, and put people in the business around that. So whilst we oversee things on a day-to-day basis, a lot of those strengths we rely on others for those within our organisation.
Both inside and outside.
Yeah, inside and outside. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. I guess that strengths part sometimes what most business owners can't get past because I'm the boss. So having that ability to recognise what you're good at, what you're not good at, can be very lead to not only more profitable results but more probably fulfilling results as well.
Oh, absolutely, and I know sort of you said based even on that the rugby stuff is that as a coach or as a you're not necessarily better at individual things than your players or like that, but it's the ability to be able to identify, get the best out of others, work out where your flaws are within a side and fixing those flaws, bringing in expertise, and as teams change, as the network changes, as our day-to-day changes, is identifying that and picking those skills up where we need them.
Yeah, good stuff. So you mentioned planning and logistics and that sort of stuff before. I know again personally, whether you guys move us streets away or sometimes a bit further, but very different to moving a whole office or moving people interstate or overseas and that sort of stuff. Planning's such an important thing, and the communication off the back of that. What's your approach to planning? Is it and how systemised is it? I guess to achieve the result you're after.
Yeah, look, it is very systemised. We rely on a really good IT department that offers us really, really good facilities as far as organising logistics goes. We have huge contracts with things like the rail networks, the boating networks, the shipping, I should say. So things like that, the containers, they're all leased through Royal Wolf on a mass scale around Australia and the world sort of thing. So a lot of that stuff is sort of taken care of with inside our franchise model. Day to day, there's still that element of making sure that is delivering what we promise in relation to getting things where they've got to be in the time frames that they do. So we rely on many different shipping, train. Effectively, most of our stuff around Australia obviously goes on train. We rely on the efficiencies of the other depots and the people they have in place. So there are quite a few moving parts, and you are relying on that. So communication within that whole network is really key.
And what about when it comes within, I guess that's relying on all the moving parts to bring it all together. What about even the planning within the more direct team as well? What are some of the things that you employ there?
Oh, look, as I said before, we're really, really seasonal. So we can basically triple in size throughout the year and then reduce that. So the level of involvement changes dramatically. So I guess my involvement even is very seasonal as far as that logistics side goes. But yeah, so it's starting at the basics of lining up the guys to be on the trucks, to getting it back to the depot, to making sure it gets to the rail and doing all that sort of stuff. So we've got a couple of really good managers. They're not just restricted to Newcastle. We've got a manager up in Darwin that's nowhere near anything, and she's a genius at what she does. So we're sort of learnt that we don't have to all be sitting in the office facing each other to have the best people in place. And we also have because our network, when Coffs is quiet, Newcastle might be busy. So we actually, we'll lean on each other when we need to.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I like that one because a lot of people think with expansion, it's replication, but replication doesn't necessarily produce scale or better results. So, being able to move resources around is pretty key. I like that too. So basically, you've identified key positions that I'd imagine are fixed employees, and then it's having that more transient or casual workforce that goes up and down as required.
Yeah, well, that was said. Obviously, just the general labour market and being unskilled sort of labour, it's always been a difficult one. That sort of blue collar space. We've actually one thing was always trying to get that staff at the time of the year when we needed them, but maintaining also that expertise throughout the year. So we need to keep enough guys on hand that know what they're doing and and stuff. But one of our big, one of our big sort of breakthroughs was the actual sort of the university market, and more so even through the guys at rugby. We've had guys that have been doctors, engineers, you name it, and they'll come and work with us for the 4 years that they're at university. They may get a truck license. They become because of the nature of the people they are, they can become as proficient, very quickly, and they've actually been, become really important parts of our business, so that they come back year in, year out.
But that in itself would suggest that, they might have their 4 years. You've always got to be looking at forward planning around resourcing, and not only, are people moving away or natural come and go, but, having that extra part about people are treating it as a temporary position for that reason. So that, again, is another element of planning, I guess.
Yeah, it does. And you said the most important part there is that you still need your guys, your actual expertise there. So it's maintaining that sort of. And so one of the things that was, I guess, the hardest for me from coming from doing your MBA and doing that stuff where you look at the revenue curve and it's like that, and you're looking to sort of flatten that curve, and we sort of fought against that for a while, and then we're just going back to now really trying to. It's about maintaining that level of expertise at its probably lowest possible level, not lowest possible level, but, getting the work in for that and being able to take advantage of the highs, and that goes around resources and everything. So we really make hay when the sun shines, but still need to maintain that expertise all year. So that's the biggest juggle, I think, is making sure that we have that balance of labour and expertise throughout a seasonal year.
And I guess then, carrying on from planning, I talk about, flexibility. And I mean, these days we hear about flexibility all the time about some team members wanting more and more of it. But I mean, from a point of view of your delivery, I imagine, it wouldn't have to be rocket science to work out not everything goes to plan in a removalist business, whether it be weather or people getting sick or things not being ready, etc. What's the importance and how have you dealt with constant change, or that ability to be agile, and how much of that is a competitive advantage compared to maybe the next removalist company?
Oh, look, we because of the standards, and you said, even been part of that greater network allows if we get caught out, Sydney may help us, or we're really good friends with some of the other franchise owners, and there's that ability to know that, especially having the three that we've had weeks up at Catherine where it is really difficult to get them. We can fly guys up from Newcastle, so we've always had that ability to move guys. We're big enough to be able to move people around and stuff like that. As far as our staff goes, with that seasonality, we actually gone to the 4-day thing for all our managers and stuff between March and October, understanding that we require them to be switched on at their absolute best for 3 months of the year. And the rest of the year they've got that day to do the washing.
And is that been have you taken the lead on that, or is that a commonality in your industry? And I guess the second part of that is, has it led to upside?
Oh, look, no, it's just that I think there was a bit of hype about it last year about the talk about the 4-day week, and I think we just expect we get a lot out of these guys. Our managers are incredible. They treat it like their own, and at that time of the year, they said things do go wrong, so you've got to make changes. They've got to be on their toes the whole time. Things like just rail bookings may fall through, and we've got to work out another way to get there. We've had the floods up through the middle of Australia. We had the floods up through Queensland. There's floods through WA where rail lines were down, so the Broome Depot were working out of Catherine, or there's we have to come up with, so at the time the scale of that time of the year for us, that seasonality, it really requires our staff to be able to commit and get people's stuff to where it's got to go at that time. So we just saw that as when we're not that busy, and when we're not, it's give them the opportunity to have that flexibility in their own lives, because they don't get it at that time of the year, or they dedicate that.
So it's at the end of the day, it's a genuine reward.
Yeah, I think it just gets the best out of them. And he said, I think you said another one with footy, you can't maintain an intensity of a high level the whole time. I think it's recognising that people do need a break, and they need to, you need to have your moments of rest, and you need to have your moments of change. And then, if you're going to perform at a high level at a certain time of the year, then it comes with some rest and throughout the year, I guess. So,
Yeah, I think that's a good one for most business owners to, we are and have been in a tough labour market. So not always about remuneration. It could be around leave, it could be around flexibility, etc. But what's your approach to that? And I like that one. We've had a lot of talk of that in our industry as well, around that 4-day. And I think the hardest thing is getting your head around it as to the impact on productivity and capacity and that sort of thing. But seems to be working for you.
Yeah, the hardest thing is, you said, when you've got a few staff, is that everyone, not everyone has a Friday or a Monday, and it's not long weekends. It's not, it's still making sure that we cover all our bases, that we have, bums on seats on the days that we need them and where we need them. So that it does create a little bit of a headache like that. But generally, we sort of have basically, our managers basically left it to themselves, and they seem to be managing it really well. And hopefully it pays dividends as far as their happiness goes.
Yeah, it's a good one, mate. It's a good one. So we've spent rugby a few times. You've got a long history on the rugby field and off the rugby field, and the coaching and I guess more committee function as well. What have you taken from rugby? I guess I'm particularly around teamwork. I've got a history in sport as well, and I can tell when we've had people come on our team in the workforce that have been in team sport. What's your take on the rugby background and how you've been able to apply that in business and getting good results?
Oh, look, I can manage to sort of bring everything back to rugby just about in my life, and that sort of teamwork sort of thing. And I guess that's teamwork it's a term that's thrown around, and the culture, it's another word that's thrown around. But I guess one thing you work out in the workplace, that you're not automatically a team just because you wear the same colour or the same thing, and it's really about respect and earning your respect and understanding what each person's role is within theirs. So look, you said I've never been a removalist. I've never been a 5'8", so it's understanding that their levels of expertise I possibly don't have, and me trying to tell other people, or just understanding that their skill set and what they do is really important. The other big one probably for me is we had a coach I was coaching first grade the other year, Mark Bell, and he came with all these credentials, and he's very well renowned in the coaching world, and simple is better, and that's when you come down to it. One thing I sort of, even when in your own business, you can come up with all these ideas and put everything in place, but at the end of the day, same as rugby, there's no point in a backline throwing triple cutouts and doing twists and turns and inside balls if you can't do basic hands. And I think sometimes in business you can put the cart before the horse and forget to come back to, if you do your basics right and you start there, then everything else sort of falls around it. So,
well, how true is that with a technology sense? This day and age, it's a great thing. Technology that can really help in businesses become quite inexpensive. Where yesteryear it was some nowhere, not even as good a tools what we've got now, but quite expensive to implement. But I think with that is all the bells and whistles, and it's the new shiny thing that everyone brings in. But I like that simple sometimes is better, and just getting simplicity I think creates clarity.
Yeah, no, I said the basics right. If you can't get your core right, then everything else on top of that's it can be irrelevant really in the business, and that goes down to the technologies and stuff like that. Like I said, our product generally is a pretty simple one. When things aren't going right, or we start finding that we've got these issues in the network and stuff like that, it is really can bring you back to are we doing the basics right, and are we doing things correctly, and what can we do better at the base level before we put. And I think that's one thing in sport is just, you said, it's the respect for others around you, respect for people in positions higher than you, below you, a committee. Another thing that we've been big on is that, as far as our work team goes, we sort of, the bookkeeper, the mechanic, everyone else we sort of treat and look at them as part of a team, I guess, rather than just the people with Allied on their back. And that's been, I think, been important for us and been great for us in business too.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think everyone's, as you said before, from an ownership point of view down to, and directors down to, the very basics of the team. You've got, what are people's strengths? What do they bring to it? And how do we, complement each other as opposed to, the hierarchy as such? What, I guess the other part of rugby, I guess, and I think many businesses could learn from this, is your ability to use your sporting, or sometimes it might be sporting, it might be interest, but those networks to lead to direct business, but also to lead to, new team members.
Yeah, look, I said we've relied very heavily on rugby for, it's all the part-time jobs I got through university were people within the rugby club, and it doesn't said it's not just limited to that. And we source a huge amount of our labour through the rugby club, through the Wildfires, through kids at Wests and kids at the junior nights, and through other people we know in the football world. So those relationships have been great as far as well said. Staffing's probably our most difficult, and that's creating that network within your community's been paramount for that. And I guess I said, and obviously just learning people like yourself and relationships you had with other people that are like-minded that are going through the same things as you. I think that being involved in whether it be a rugby club or a book club or whatever it might be, is that you meet people that have those familiarities or go through those adversities in life that you face. So.
No, I think that's a great one. It's it can be very insular sometimes in business, especially if you're a smaller business, and reaching out to it could be events or it could be just things you're already involved in that can actually be a godsend in the long run. So we spoke a lot about the network you're a part of, and I guess further that is the collaboration piece. I know you mentioned so much about what you have at your disposal, the systems and the big contracts which are afforded to the wider group. But what would you say is the key to making that network work for you?
Well, look at this, and I get you said. I think we probably just spoke about it. Is that it is creating those relationships inside that network. We work very closely with the other franchises sometimes where they face the same problems. They have to put in place the same insurances, the same. They've got to produce the same. Documents and OH&S systems and stuff like that. So we work closely with those guys. We rely on the team in Darwin or the team in Perth to deliver our product to get effectively, basically keep our promises to the client. So when we are out and around and we always try and stop and create those a name to a face and stuff, because it's very easy with a network that's so big to try to just sort of worry about your own backyard. We've got the managers that operate the whole environment. We work very closely with those guys and we have great relationships. So it's relationships are the key.
Yeah, so I guess that's the benefit of having, one of your pros on your model is that those people can be identified fairly easily. But is it still something you have to then go and reach out and, as you say, build that relationship, or is it just implied by being part of the Allied group?
No, I said it's whilst we're all individual businesses, and then you get individual depots. So it can because of the pressure that the actual whole industry and especially Allied can be under at a certain time of year. It actually can get quite testy. You don't want to have to deal with other people's problems. So building that understanding and relationships is really, really important. Yeah, and things do go wrong. Trains derail. Bushfires happen, floods happen. There's things that go wrong, and obviously, when the network's working great, then you don't need to build these relationships, but they're there for those times when to make your life easier when they don't.
Yeah. I want to pick up on. I mean, I didn't have this written down necessarily, but one of the points you raised about, it can be a very stressful environment because, well, one, you're dealing with. I say people generally, but people in a stressful time of moving, but also some of the natural disasters or otherwise that could occur. How do you go about just de-escalating some of those situations, and how's the importance of, I guess, whether it be you or Tom or anyone else, that leadership piece with the teams and bringing a sense of calm back?
Oh, look, it's a tricky one actually, but it's like you said, obviously most people are appreciative of the unforeseen, but with removals, there's not a lot of flexibility on time. They don't necessarily have contingencies. They've got to be out that day because the house settles the next day. They've got to be at work at a certain day at a certain time. So it does create quite a stressful environment of getting it there. Obviously, you try and give yourself leeway, and when you're dealing with Defence Forces or you're dealing with corporates and BHP, there's an expectation to not is to get these things done. So obviously. Yes, as I said, part of a big network, and there are managers in place there that are really good at their job inside our network, which help facilitate that, and having those having contingencies. So when we couldn't get normally the things that go from Newcastle to Katherine, which is a big path for us at Christmas, around the Christmas time for Defence Force. The rail goes down through Melbourne up through Adelaide. I think it cuts up to Katherine that way. When that's all flooded, you have to have contingencies that we can run them on road trains through Queensland. So there's those in place, and you rely on other people's relationships and stuff. So contingency is a big part of that as well.
But a lot of that still comes back, as you said, it's just whether it be relationships external or internal, just to understand your people and help the situation there. So I guess, we've spoken a lot about, the minutiae, if you like, or the running of the business from a delivery point of view, an operational sense. But as you said, when you got into this, hadn't been in business, I guess, before, and the learning curve, you've been doing it for a long time. So I guess in running the business and working more on the business as opposed to in it, what are some of the habits or behaviours that you employ, including what sort of, whether it be advisors or networks or mentors, et cetera, you put around you, but what are the things you do to keep that business going?
Look, we're very lucky. Tom's very good at his job, and we've worked very, very well together for a long time now. To have a business partner where that you're both on the same page, that you both sort of you look at things in a similar way. So that's where it all starts for us, is having that strength that we don't have any. At the top, it's about getting things done and getting the job done and going home to your families and having your weekends and whatever. So we come from a similar place, and let's just get the job done. I think that sort of really, really helps us. As far as, sorry, I lost my track there a little bit, but
no, but just in your habits. So you got your alignment, I guess, with a business partner. But what else in doing, like the reporting, the information for decision making, and just that support and advisory network, I guess, you put around yourselves? Yeah,
look, same thing. It's those external relationships are really, really important now. Obviously, accounting, solicitors, and these people have, they're our friends. They become part of a team, very much part of our team. We're just putting that faith and trust in the people you use internally. As far as our, reporting and stuff like that goes, we keep, our systems, the way we report to Allied's pretty systematic in our monthly. The way it gets done there on a monthly basis, everything's sort of reconciled. So they hold the accounts for rail, they hold the accounts for some of those bigger things. So our system's very systemised, and then as I said, I think it goes back to that flexibility as far as our part of that goes.
No, good. All right, here's some sage advice. I guess biggest lessons and or mistakes that have turned into lessons that you've had in business.
I think that was the one thing, is that was coming from the university, thinking going into business is really adapting to the fact that running your own business is nothing necessarily like those core skills are good to have, but learning your own industry and learning to be able to make changes and it was the most important thing. Realising that you do need to make changes, that that if you sit wait for something to happen, if if things aren't going well, it's not going to change on its own. That you do need to implement change. You have to make hard decisions, and some of that was one of those ones. The GFC was a really good lesson for us, I think. There is that straight away it's sort of like we sort of struggled through that period. Is having the ability to sort of realise that whilst you can't control all external factors, that you can always change things internally. You can always fix things and improve things. So, I think it's the biggest lessons have been is that is to understand that you've got to be that flexible. You've got to be able to move and make change.
I love that point you just raised about the internal, external, and what you can control. We do it often. We talk to people about your SWOT, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and there's so many people like at the moment, for instance, interest rates. Well, we can't control interest rates. What we can do is look at what we do in our own business to, whether it be take opportunities or mitigate, the threats around it. But it's good to see what you're saying. Same you said, GFC, you can't control that, but what can we do within what we can control? So pretty important piece.
Yeah, and the other one too is that limitation understanding is understanding your own limitations. understanding your own strengths and building something around you that that brings in the right skills, the right people to create the environment that you we sort of strive for. And look, you said it took me a while to sort of get my head around the industry. As I said, it's not somewhere I saw myself, so it took me a while to actually get my head in the place that that Allied was my future. And working with Tom, one of my best mates, or best mate, has been unbelievable. I wear shorts and a hoodie. I don't normally wear this each day, and I don't miss swimming carnivals or Easter hat parades. So it's sort of been able to see the pros and cons within your own business and why you're actually doing it and stuff as well. That's been the big thing for me.
And accommodates, what I guess is most important, so come back to whether that be family or lifestyle, etc. Yep. Yeah. Good one. Best advice ever received?
Yes, it's a tricky one, but there was it comes back to that point actually. I was just trying to think of a couple of things that along those lines, and one of them is, I can't remember where I heard the quote, but it comes about that improvement or change starts with a mirror that works, and that's that GFC thing, is that until you look at yourself or the way you're doing things or whatever, I don't always apply it and don't always implement it the way I probably should, but is always going, hang on, before we start blaming other things, come back and start thinking about what you can do to change your own environment, your own yourself, your team, your whatever, and I think that applies pretty strongly. Yeah, the other one I sort of in relation to that is, you said I lost my dad a long time ago, and while it's not a profound sort of saying, two of the things that I sort of remember with that is empathy and resilience. They're the two things that sort of I can manage to apply them every single day and everything, and that's what I guess, and in business is applying it to the fact that understand your environment, understand the people you're dealing with, understand what they're going through, understand why someone on the other end of the line, in Adelaide might be shouting down the phone. And I think that being able to sort of understand your environment, and then the same thing is building those skills to be able to cope with it yourself when things aren't going right, is to roll with the punches when they come along. And I think they're the sort of two things I've actually really sort of carried and sort of helped get us to where we are.
Yeah, no, mate, I love that. And I can see when you talk about it, the passion, it's funny, I talk to a lot of people and say at the end of the day, if you're in business, you're in the people game. There might be some more product or whatever, but a lot of the stuff we supply or the service we provide is that's an outcome or a delivery mechanism. But you're dealing with people every day. In your case, you're dealing with a lot more people, given what you said, seasonal, and people under stress. So I think that's magic. We say empathy and resilience, and we could all probably learn from that. So what what's before I wrap up, what's the future? You've gone to 3 sites. What's the future for Allied, and more importantly for Jode and Tom?
Look, we're still sort of, I guess we're always looking at opportunities. I guess we're sort of, our family's getting older, and we enjoy working together, so we're always looking at other opportunities. Allied, we've got some really good team members in place. I hope that they'll be with us for a long term. So, involving them more in the business as we go forward. But yeah, no, there's no plan to wind it down anytime soon. And we're always, I think our network will get bigger. The way the model is sort of, a lot of the expertise that actually exists within Allied now lies within 3 or 4 franchisees. There's quite a few of us that got multiple. So I think we're a very integral part of Allied Pickford's, or Allied, I should say, as well. So, any opportunities we can find, we'll continue to look and grow and get better at what we do. Yeah,
it's great. Have some fun along the way.
Yeah. Yep, that's important.
Well, I guess, mate, there's some great stuff in that. And I love the team analogies and that sort of thing. But a few things to wrap up for me is, just because you've gone a certain way with whether it be study or experience or whatever, it's never too late to zig rather than zag, and I think you're the perfect example of that. Niching, I like. A lot of businesses, they will try and offer everything to everyone, but I like that, especially in that defence piece, know what's at your doorstep and how you can leverage that. The franchise model, I think that from what you've just shared with us, whilst there might be some cons, there's a lot of pros in there, and what doors that opens up, whether it be global networks, bigger contracts, that sort of thing, just by being part of a collective. A lot of people need to look at that aspect for their business model. Key one you kept mentioning, knowing your skill sets, knowing your limitations more importantly, and then complementing, whether it be with, as you said, your business partner or your management team or even external advisory and the like to get your outcome. And keep things simple. It's funny. A lot of the videos we do with many people, they say the same thing. And I think that's probably a real good one to approach business, because you are right. We can make it very complex. And a big part of everything else you had was relationships, and that probably comes the back of your sporting and your rugby background. To me, I couldn't agree more. But where you said, and you made that comment about looking in the mirror, which is a big part of relationships as well, rather than looking to pass blame. And empathy and resilience, that'll sit with me. I thought that was excellent. So we can all understand what our team, what our customers, probably your customers, a bit more stressed than mine, but understand what's going on for them. So, mate, all that was great. And I can vouch. I've used Allied several times myself. Hopefully I don't have to use them with the greatest respect in the foreseeable future. We'll stay put for a while, but. Mate, like if you need them, Allied at Newcastle and other destinations. But Jode, thanks for joining me on Down to Business, mate.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Andrew.
Hopefully you got a bit out of that. Until next time, cheers.